Hello, everyone. Welcome to Drumfillskafe. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Denis, and welcome to another episode of this 12th season. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. As usual, before we begin, I will invite you to go check out the Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram pages of Drumfillskafe, to do a like, a subscription, and of course, to share if you are so willingly to do. We really appreciate that. I will also take you to the main website, drumfillskafe.com, where you can find out about all the past seasons, all the guests, all the content we've created in the past 11 and 12 season right now. So thank you so much, drumfillskafe.com. So my guest tonight is quite possibly one of the best educators and drummers in the jazz audience today. He has performed with legends such as Bob Mintzer, Woody Herman, Stan Getz, Mel Jackson, Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie, and John Scofield. He is now a member of the Vanguard Jazz Orchestra for quite some time now. And if I'm not mistaken, that orchestra has held a Monday night residency at the Village Vanguard Jazz Club in New York for 5 decades. Very impressive. On the educational side, he has authored what is arguably some of the best important jazz drumming books, The Art of Bop Drumming, Beyond Bop Drumming, and The Jazz Drummers Workshop, as well as other books. Please welcome the incredibly talented and gracious Mr. John Riley. Hello, John.
Hey, Denis. Very nice to be here. Wow, 12 years you've been doing this.
Actually, 12 seasons. So basically, we do a winter season and we do an autumn season. So it's our sixth year, basically. Oh. Getting to our sixth year, yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes. It started as a small little COVID project just to keep us busy, turned into something completely different. And we're very lucky to have talked to many people, including yourself today. So thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
I see a lot of records in the back of you. So I imagine you're sort of a listening room or sort of a drummer's man cave or some sort.
Actually, this is my practice room.
Okay, I see.
And, you're getting a good view. The rest of it's not as organized as that.
I'll admit to the same thing. There's a couple of drums and a couple of things on the floor right now that I'm sort of hiding because, they were on the top of that case about 5 minutes ago. So I admit to that too as well. Well, thanks so much for taking the time with us. I had the pleasure to meet you this year in Drummondville when you came down to do a clinic for the PASS, Percussive Society. And you were so gracious enough to talk to us afterwards and just exchange a few words. So, and of course, I didn't want to take all your time. So I figured, well, maybe I'll invite him to the podcast and I can get all my questions and possibly answer other people's questions at the same time. So hopefully that's what we'll do today with you. So thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
I usually start with this question. I know it's the typical question to start a podcast, but of course, it usually goes into other places. But what is it about music for you that started this whole journey down jazz, drumming, and all that stuff? I know for you, I think it was 8 years old that you started.
I started pretty young. I started, I think, because I saw the Beatles on TV. There was something, I've said this many times, there was something about the energy and the excitement and the fun that they looked like they were having, that as a young kid, it was actually that energy and fun and excitement that attracted me. Music was the environment, but it wasn't really the music. It was everything else around it that made me kind of get into the music.
Interesting. Of course, that's true that the Beatles, that was a big moment back then. I must admit, that's true. So did you have a whole Ringo phase? Did you go into this whole Ringo sort of Ludwig and all that stuff?
No, I always admired Ringo, but it was just a doorway into music. Of course, I respect, nobody played that music the way he did. No one would have come up with those parts.
True.
But just the excitement around the music and wanting to participate in something that seemed modern and like fun. It was fun.
Mm-hmm. For sure, yeah. Because I think previous to that, of course, I'm a little younger, but previous to that, I think it was maybe Elvis or a couple of bands like that were sort of exciting, but not as a group. I imagine sort of the first group to be so to cross over here. In other words.
Well, and it was seeing them on television,
Mm.
which was much more kind of graphic and powerful than just the radio.
I see. All right, I see the visual of it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. We take that for granted today, but yeah, I can imagine back then that must have been quite a shock.
Yeah. In fact, there was a documentary made recently about the host of that TV show named Ed Sullivan.
Right.
And it was a great documentary about music and the power that his show had in introducing all these different kinds of bands. And I really enjoyed seeing that recently, and it rekindled all these memories.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's funny. There's a friend of ours that does a tribute from the Beatles from back then, from back in the early '60s, and they played a show not too far here to where I live, and the energy was there. The energy that you're describing, even some, I don't know, whatever time it is, almost 60 years later, the crowd, even the younger ones, were like, just so excited by the energy of their playing. So I guess it transferred after all these years. Interesting.
Yeah, that's it's amazing that it continues. I remember my father saying to me, "Yeah, you're really excited about this now, but next year I'm going to ask you who the Beatles are, and you won't remember them."
Oh, he was a little wrong on that one, unfortunately.
Calculated.
It's funny. It's interesting. Cool. So it goes from the Beatles and then to, I imagine, lessons or taking drum lessons.
Well, my father knew a little bit about drumming, and he got me a snare drum. And I write with my left hand, so
Oh.
he told me you hold the right stick like this and the left stick like this. So basically, I was playing a kind of messed up left-handed traditional grip on the snare drum that I had, and I think I was making a lot of noise in the house. I would have the snare drum next to the stereo, and I would play with the radio. And I guess it began to bug my parents. They said, "Yeah, if you're going to do that much, you better take some lessons." So I took lessons with a guy named Tom Sokola, who was about 10 years older than me and actually was a student at the Manhattan School of Music at that time. With Steve Gadd was one of his colleagues.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. And he was from a big Italian family of all musicians, and they played weddings and social gigs and stuff like that. So he worked on reading and the rudiments, but he was also kind of preparing me to play those gigs. So he was showing me how to play a cha-cha and a merengue and a waltz and a polka and all of that kind of stuff in my lessons as like a 9 or 10-year-old. So that was part of what we did. I did my lessons were $3 a half hour. My mother would take me to the lessons, and I had to learn this snare drum stuff and the rudiments. And he was teaching me these beats. And at the end of the lesson, I could bring in 145 RPM record, and he would show me what was on that if I got everything else together. And so it was a really nice relationship. And we were in contact. I was a student of his for about 5 years. And then at one point he said, I think I've taken you about as far as I can. Maybe you should look for another teacher. And so that was about the time I was starting to think more about jazz. But we had a great relationship, and he was a fantastic teacher with this sort of carrot and stick approach. If you learn this Haskell Har solo, then I'll show you what's on that 45 RPM record, that kind of thing.
And out of curiosity, what was the 45 sometimes? Just to curious to know your influences.
Yeah, well, it was a lot of times I didn't know the names of the drummers on the 45.
I see, yeah.
I remember one that I really was captivated by was a drummer named Dino Danelli, who played with the Rascals, the Young Rascals.
Okay.
and they had a hit song called "Good Lovin'," where he kind of played a mambo,
Mm.
and I was really interested in getting that together.
I know the song. I know it in my head. I know
Yeah,
what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
yeah,
I never
and then
made a connection. That's true. That's true. But
then Carmine Appice was a big influence early on, because this was right when kind of FM radio started to take over, and they would play longer tracks than the 3-minute singles. Um, and he played with a band called Vanilla Fudge,
mhm.
and they had some long songs with big drum solos in them. Um, so he was also kind of an early inspiration.
Yeah, and apparently he had some sort of nice relationship with Bonham, and they were like buddies and exchanged. Anyways, these all talk about that because I followed a bit of Carmine's career. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me was I had heard Carmine and I'd heard Gene Krupa, and I kind of heard a connection between the way Gene would play solos and triplety stuff on the tom toms, and
Mhm.
Carmine kind of did the same thing. And I might have heard Carmine before I heard Gene Krupa.
Hmm.
And when I heard Gene Krupa, I thought he had stolen Carmine's stuff.
It's true. That's like, yeah. I think there was a cover song. I thought, oh, that's a great cover. That's a great song, and then you find out that no, that's not the original.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
it's interesting. But yes, Carmine's a great player. Of course, I have one of his the book that he wrote. I think it was called Double Feet that I studied when I was in my teens because it was this whole thing about rock drumming and adding double feet and all that stuff. Yeah.
I think there was another book before that called Realistic
Stick
Rock.
rock, right? That's true. I think that's that one as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
very nice. Okay, so you're doing all the rock stuff, and when does jazz arrive? When does that arrive for you?
Well, I had that Gene Krupa record.
Okay.
Um, it was actually the soundtrack to the Gene Krupa story, which was a movie. Um, and so I had this soundtrack record. And when I was sort of exploring rock and roll, I was also playing with that recording. Like
Hmm.
every night I would play with that record. And I remember there was one song in there, I forget the title of it, maybe Back Home in Indiana,
Hmm.
that was faster than I could hang with all the way through. Ding, ding,
Isn't it?
ding, 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 ding. And it was a challenge to get to be able to make it to the end of the song.
Hmm.
So that was one of sort of this practice landmark that I was working towards. And so I was hearing him play. Um, I got that record. I don't know how old I was, but at the same time, I also got a Max Roach record.
Okay.
They were given to me by a teacher in school whose son was a drummer and was no longer playing.
I see.
And the Max Roach record was a record that came out with two different titles. The version I got was called Conversation, was also known as Deeds, Not Words. And I couldn't follow it. I didn't understand what was going on there. The Carmine stuff and the Beatles and Dino Danelli, I could kind of follow that stuff. So
Hmm.
it took a few years for me to understand what Max was doing, or what Max was attempting to do, or I was attempting to understand.
Man.
That took a while.
I understand. Yeah. No, and I think that's a lot of things. And I'm probably talking just mostly about myself, but for a lot of rock drummers that sort of go into those things and to the jazz world, if you will, it is kind of a let me re-listen to that a few times before I can understand what's going on. Anyways, that was my experience back in the day, back in the early days. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call myself a rock drummer. Uh, at the beginning, I was just a drummer, and rock
Okay.
was what was around me.
Hmm.
Um, I kind of had a similar experience when one of my high school buddies gave me the first Mahavishnu
Hmm.
orchestra record. And I listened to that a couple times and had to put it away. I didn't know what was going on there. And then maybe 6 months later, something dawned on me about the way the songs were organized. I mean, of course, I was knocked out by the virtuoso drumming by Billy Cobham,
For sure.
but the music was more complex, and it took me a while to figure out how to deal with that side of it.
I went through something similar recently. I've been going into Tony Williams stuff, and my prof was a big Elvin Tony back in the day fan, and he would make me listen to it, and I would listen to it, and I'd be like, "It is fast. I'm not sure what's going on, but it is fast. It is interesting." And it's just recently that I've sort of picked up those records, the stuff that he was doing by himself, Tony. And it's like, okay, now I sort of get it some 20 years later, but I sort of start to get it. I'm not sure I can still play it. Tony's Tony, but I'm starting to get it. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. I'm still trying to get it.
Well, I didn't say I can play it, or like, I could try my best, kind of like what you did with the Max Roach record. I could have fun and try to follow him for 2-3 minutes and probably take a break in between. Because it's a song, I think it's something, I can't remember the name of it right now on the top of my head, but it's one of those better known songs from Tony that he's just doing very fast on the hi-hat and transfers that to the right, and then they go off for 5-6 minutes. So
well, I was kind of introduced to Tony once I got to college, once I got to the university, and wasn't introduced to him through my teachers, but through the other drummers. There were a couple of guys that were a few years older than me that kind of became mentors and said, you should hear this one song on this one record that David Garibaldi played on, and you should listen to this thing that Purdy played on, and you should listen to this thing that Elvin played on, and this thing that Grady Tate played on. And so they became kind of like filters for me, so I didn't have to buy 10 records to find the most powerful song by one drummer, and that was really advantageous for me. Listen to these 3 songs that Elvin played on, and listen to these couple of songs that Tony played on. And not that I would get everything from that, but it was a powerful and effective introduction to these different ways of dealing with music.
For sure. And I think that's what peers or profs are supposed to do, is to introduce you to stuff that you're not aware of. That was the case with Tower Power with my prof. He was also a fan of that band and tried to make me understand of that snare syncopation and what David was doing, So you don't get it at first, but eventually you're like, okay, I'm starting to get it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And Gad was another big influence. This, I'm talking about the 70s, and this stuff was new, and Tony wasn't that much prior to that, especially Tony with Miles and Elvin with Coltrane. So these, for some reason, well, not for some reason, but these records, you could hear the drums better on those records than on the records of Max Roach and Art Blakey and those guys. So, and it was more current. So that was kind of more appealing to me at first. And then at a point I realized I had some gaps in my drumming vocabulary, and I had to go back and check and really study Max Roach and Art Blakey and Roy Haynes. We get introduced to music at one point, and then you kind of have the option of freezing everything, and everything is based on that, or you move forward from there, or you go back in history. Nobody is exposed to music in chronological order.
That's true. That is true. That's true.
So you get some exposure, and then you see how, if it touches you, then you become curious about understanding more about it. And the more dedicated you are to understanding it, the further you go.
That's true. That's true. That's like when I got introduced to Vinny Colaiuta on the Sting records, and I was like, "Who is this guy?" And then you go to Zappa, and you go to all the other stuff he's done, and then you're like, "Oh, okay." Now I'm starting to understand. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I kind of got introduced to Vinny, like, for example, in chronological order,
Hmm.
because it was occurring. I mean, we're about the same age, only he was making bigger records. um,
It's not a fair comparison.
but that's what I'm talking about.
Interesting. Yes.
Um, and so everyone kind of has these experiences. Yeah, you heard him with Sting, and then you loved it. And what else has this guy done? And how did he get to this level? And
Basically.
that's when you go backwards.
Yeah, exactly. And then you discover the solo records and then the stuff he done with other people, and you're like, oh, okay, like he's actually sort of holding back with staying. He's actually just staying groovy, and but he was doing some interesting things because we're talking, and I don't want to go too long about this for me, but back in '91, I think is the record, the 10 Summoner's Tale came out, 1993, and of course that song that where he's doing some
Oh
singing.
yeah, yeah.
7 days.
Yeah.
7 days, and you're like, oh, this is I can't follow this. What's happening here? And he was doing some sort of a lot of stuff like that on that record, and it was very interesting compared to say what Manu or Cache was doing prior, and that sort of thing. But yeah, and then you go back, like as you say, and you go backwards or forwards, and yeah, you kind of discover a player and its music, and yeah, no, interesting, yeah.
Well, even Vinny said that he took what Tony played and Gad played and put them in a blender, and that kind of became his thing.
Interesting, yeah.
And so, he was looking backwards too. He was listening to Elvin when he was at Berkeley, but also Gad and Garibaldi and Zigaboo and Birdie and Cobham.
Yeah. And Cobham is on that Tony level for me. It's fast, but it's so powerful at the same time. It's just so wow. Anyways, yeah.
They're almost the same age.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I think Tony was an influence on Cobham early on.
That makes sense.
And then when Cobham joined Mahavishnu, he surpassed Tony in the public's eye as a drum god.
I see. Interesting. Yeah. I saw him in the late 90s, and I was in my early 20s, and I think he must have been in his 40s or 50s, and he had more energy than me at that show. I believe he just burned the place down that night, and I was like, okay, like I thought I was in shape. My God, okay, yeah.
Well, when my teacher, who was Tom Sokola, said you should look for somebody else, one of the people I took a lesson from was Billy Cobham, who I didn't know who he was. I hadn't heard Mahavishnu at that point. I took 2 lessons from him, and they were all on a Remo practice pad and all sort of hand technique. He was very strict, very stern, and kind of scared me.
Oh.
And so after those 2 lessons, I said, well, maybe this isn't the guy for me. I wish I had known about Intermounting Flame then, but but then eventually I found Joe Morello, who was very, very influential as a teacher. I studied with him, from the summer after my junior year in high school through my senior year in high school. And then I went away. I grew up in New Jersey, and he taught in New Jersey. Then I went to college in Texas, and when I came back for the summers and took lessons from Morello and had contact with him for the rest of his life.
Oh, that's nice.
And every time I play, something that he said to me enters my awareness and my thinking about touch and sound and relaxation. Yeah, he was a profound influence.
And if you could just share one of those tidbits with us, I'm curious. What about sound, for instance?
Well, he would say that this is a percussive instrument, but we want to make the sound as legato, as rich as possible. And the way to achieve that is by letting the stick, playing in a way that allows the stick to get off the surface in the shortest amount of time.
Mm.
You know, if the stick stays on a cymbal a millisecond longer, it mutes some of the overtones. Or on a snare drum, the same thing. And that can be an effect that you want, but you want the roundest sound the most you can. I was introduced to him at this Ludwig Drum Symposium that took place at the University of Miami in Florida in 1971. And Roy Haynes was there, and Gary Burton was there, and Carmine was there.
Wow.
What I remember about Carmine was that Ludwig had sent him some what they called Atlas stands, because he was breaking all the cymbal stands that they had up till that point.
Okay.
He had some prototypes at this workshop which didn't hold up either. Before they released the stuff, they field tested it, and they were calling them Atlas stands, but I'm sure the ones they released were much stronger than the ones Carmine had.
Had it destroyed.
But I attended classes by each of these people. My classes with Morello didn't really have a profound effect on me.
Okay.
But on the plane ride back to New Jersey, there were two guys sitting behind me with their sticks out, and they were wailing on the back of my seat, like faster than any kids I'd ever experienced. And one of them was Danny Gottlieb.
Ah.
And so we started talking. Where do you live? What do you do? Who do you study with? He said, well, you know, Joe Morello teaches about 20 minutes from you. You should call him for an evaluation. Those were his words.
Okay.
So I set up this evaluation. I went to see Joe Morello, and he kind of said the same thing to me in a way that my prior teacher said, which was, you've gone about as far as you can with the technique you have. You need some new information.
Mm.
And Morello said to me, as kind of a sales pitch, I guess, but he was being honest, if you do as I say, I promise you can double your speed in 3 months.
Mm.
What kid didn't want that?
Of course.
Yeah, that wasn't really the focus of what he was teaching. It was much more holistic and universal than just speed. But that was what hooked me.
Yeah, that was a sales pitch.
Yeah. And he was an interesting teacher because he gave very small assignments, but expected big results from them. And he would give you an assignment of doing a certain kind of thing at a certain metronome marking. And then he would demonstrate the upward potential of this thing if you followed his procedures. And his sound was so beautiful, and his speed was unbelievable. And so that kind of drew me in. And I'm very grateful that Danny was sitting behind me on that plane.
Yeah, that's kind of a chance meeting. That's chance meeting. He could have been annoying somebody else back in the
Yeah. And so that was advantageous.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing, John.
Cool.
And quickly to end sort of your sort of bio, because I do want to get to the stuff you have done, not too far, is that you went to University of North Texas College, and you were part of the 1976 lab band. Talk to me about that experience.
Well, when I got to North Texas, I had certain skills, but I also had a lot of deficiencies in that I didn't have that much experience reading big band kind of music.
I see.
I was very good with Cerrone and Wilcoxon and that sort of snare drum stuff, but I had no experience basically with reading a chart for a big band. Um, so there were 150 drummers at that school when I was there.
Wow.
And,
Okay. That's a
and
lot.
I was probably number 149
Okay.
in terms of the things that they valued, which was how can you function in the ensembles that we have here
Right.
that were sort of ranked. So it was competitive to become a member of the 1 o'clock lab band, which was the band that rehearsed at 1 o'clock. So I kind of followed the drummer that was in that band, and I followed him around to every rehearsal to gain more knowledge about what this challenge was all about. When I was a kid, my father bought me a record that Jim Chapin made called For Drummers Only, which was a Music -1 record. And I played with that record a lot, which was a jazz kind of swingy thing. My teacher, who at the time was named John Getz at North Texas, was trying to help me improve my reading skills in that idiom. And he showed me some techniques and things to work on. But I wasn't really, after 3 or 4 weeks, I wasn't making the progress that he was happy with.
Okay.
And so one day, the next lesson, he tried a new strategy. He put on a record for me to play along with the music in front of it.
Okay.
And as luck would have it, he put the first song on from the Jim Chapin record, which was called The Lady is a Tramp, which I had played with 1,000 times.
Okay.
But I'd never seen the music for it, because Jim Chapin released that in two versions. One was just an LP minus the drums, and the other one was kind of one of these book things that opened up with text and the charts and explanations for how to look at this stuff. My father was kind of frugal, and he bought the simpler version without the method book.
I see.
But I knew the sounds. What I didn't connect was the representation with what the musical graphic notation looked like in relation to those sounds. But after I played this song from my teacher, he said, "Oh, you've been practicing this week." And I didn't tell him I'd played with that song 100 to 1,000 times. But that was a kind of a turning point for me, where I could suddenly, the song was ba-da-ba-ba-ba-boo-dee-da, or something like that. Suddenly I know what ba-da-boom, that's an accent on the end of one. I know the sound, I know what a setup is, but I didn't know what that looked like until that point. So that kind of helped me gain the skills to become more successful in those ensembles at the school.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there was all these older guys that were pointing me in the direction of different recordings to listen to, and then being surrounded in this playing environment was really fantastic.
And did you eventually make it? You did make it, I imagine, for the...
Well, the interesting thing was that I had a lot of skills when I arrived there, but I didn't have the skill they valued the most, which was this reading thing.
Yeah.
Eventually, I got that together, and strangely enough, they hired me to teach there after my second year.
Okay.
And shortly after that, I made it into the first band. Yeah.
Interesting. That's interesting to listen to you struggle throughout those years. Yeah.
Well, I could tell you more about my struggles, but another big turning point for me was after my freshman year at school. I got a job playing in an amusement park.
Okay.
Which was in Houston, Texas. It was called Astro World. And it was basically like a 8 or 10-piece band that played kind of a Broadway review type show.
I see.
And there were these charts there, and there was a conductor. And I wasn't that comfortable looking at a chart and following a conductor at the
Doctor.
same time.
Yeah.
And so after the first day, I got fired.
Oh.
But that incredibly disappointed me,
Mm,
but it also angered me that I still had this deficiency that I wasn't able to overcome.
I
And
see.
so that summer, when I thought I was going to be playing 8 shows a week, 8 shows a day at the amusement park every day of the week, suddenly I have nothing.
Mm.
And that was a period of very intense practicing
I can imagine. Yeah.
because of my disappointment in not succeeding there.
Hmm.
Um, when I got back to school in September, I think people said I sounded different. I
Okay.
started to climb up the ranks, and I remember one guy said, "Man, what were you eating last summer?"
A lot of charts, man. A lot of charts.
I did. And so that was we have these moments of clarity about what we need to do.
I see.
And that was one of them that was motivated by failure at what I needed to do.
It is.
Uh,
It is a great motivator for sure. Yes.
yeah, you have expectations that you're moving forward, and then you get punched in the nose, um, and then you reevaluate. And
Yeah.
I think that the important thing is that you recognize where the shortcomings were, and you decide to attack them.
Right. Right.
Some people would just say, "Well, I don't really care about that so much."
Or that's not for me. I'll just do disco band or something else. Yeah. For instance.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Interesting.
So
Oh,
that was kind of a profound moment. How are you going to react to this disappointment?
interesting. And I think that's a good. Maybe I'm extrapolating here, but it's a good way to think about it in music in general, in musical career. Basically, is when you get to those points where there's a bump or there's a wall. How do you react to it? Which I'm
Yeah,
sure you've experienced throughout your career.
and in life, I mean, just
Mm.
in life, you know, you say, "Okay, I'm going to change direction," or "Okay, I'm going to climb that mountain."
Mm-hmm. For sure. Very nice. Thank you for sharing. That's very nice. Well, if I'm not mistaken, you can go on the YouTubes because there's everything on YouTubes, and I believe you're there with the Lab 76 band. There's sort of an excerpt there. Well,
Oh, maybe so.
there's an excerpt of I think there's a young John Riley playing drums with the band on YouTube. And anyways, I'll send you a link if you're interested. But it sounds good. It sounds amazing, honestly.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
It
So
might
I'm
be.
not sure if it's you, but it says Lab 76. It's an excerpt of it, and yeah, I think that's you. So, anyways, but the band sounds great, and it's interesting to see the band as part of it's so how can I explain this? Like I remember going to Drum Fest. We had a Drum Fest here in Montreal for the longest time, and the McGill University had a big band, and it was the first time seeing a big band other than Johnny, of course, at 11 o'clock, with Ex Shaughnessy, when I was a kid. And it is a powerful thing to see, and it's an impressive thing to see a big band. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's sometimes you have to kind of feel like a Hercules to hold all those wild horses together.
interesting. So let's talk about a bit the people you played with. I'm curious to know how those experience went by. I know one of the people you've played a lot with is Bob Mintzer in various albums. I think from '86 to 2006. I think it's 11 albums you've made with him, and yeah, just talk to me about that experience and playing with Bob.
I met Bob playing in somebody's apartment in Brooklyn, playing in a quartet jam session. and he's an exceptional musician with really consistent time.
Mm.
It just feels easy to play with him. Right around that time, Peter Erskine had been playing with him a lot.
Okay.
And I don't know, just previous, or I don't know the timing exactly, but Peter decided to leave New York. And Bob asked me to kind of replace Peter. So that's, I was fortunate to play that little jam session with Bob, and that we had a rapport. And sometimes you have to wait for somebody to leave town, or for a door to open.
Right.
And I think the first record I did with Bob, Peter is also on it.
I see. Okay.
And then it kind of grew from there. And that's been a treat. I saw Bob last week. He was in New York with the Yellow Jackets, and I went to hear them, and they sounded great. And Will Kennedy plays that music beautifully.
He is Yellow Jackets are one of those bands that I gravitated towards. It's just something about it for me. So yeah, interesting.
Well, the songs are both hip and accessible.
Mm.
And there's sort of a global view of potential grooves.
I see.
Some Afro-Cuban stuff, some Brazilian stuff, some more African sounding stuff, and Will finds a way to pick the right angle for each of the compositions.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You've played a lot with Bob. How was the show with Bob, for instance?
Well, I didn't play with Bob. I went to hear him play with the Yellow Jackets.
No, I mean, but when you recorded with him and stuff, you to turn it back to you, not to go on
Okay.
the Yellow Jackets.
Well, Bob, I don't want to sound arrogant, but he tended to hire the best horn players, the best musicians he could when he had a recording session.
Oh, okay.
And the procedure was that we would rehearse the day before the recording session, really? And play through, in 3 hours, play through all the 10 or 12 songs we were going to do, basically to find out if there were any wrong notes, and for Bob to decide who was going to solo on which tune.
Okay.
When we went in the studio, I mean, that was the rehearsal. When we went in the studio, we recorded, and a lot of the things, well, we could record a whole album in 4 hours.
Really? Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. And because everybody was a great sight reader.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And often we would do a take, the first take, and that would be the one that's on the record. It was like that kind of professionalism. So it was inspiring to be around those other musicians, and to sort of fulfill the needs of the music. That's one of the skills that I refined when I was at North Texas, was to have a piece of music put in front of you and to look at it and know what it's going to sound like before you play a note. And that's our responsibility. We actually need to be the best reader in the band, because we need to anticipate where the horn players are going to need a little assistance, right, where they're going to be a little nervous. And our job is to smooth that road out. So it's not the kind of thing where you can listen to it 4 times and figure out what to do.
Right.
You need to be able to do it on the spot, because you can see that figure on the end of 3 is going to feel a little left-handed, and you want to prepare that the right kind of drama is there, but also that it's very obvious where the horn players should play.
Let's see. And when you say smoothing out, you mean sort of building some sort of foundation where they don't lose time, or you assist them in a way that you kind of hit with them. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, but I want to play something that leads them like leading a horse to water. I want
I
to lead
see.
them exactly to the water where there's no stumbling.
I see.
Yeah,
So kind of a setup towards that. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
absolutely a setup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
And so
That
you
is,
have to be looking ahead in the music so that you can provide that in the appropriate places.
and that's always been, and I know it's a skill. It's just have to work for it. But that's always been impressive to me. That's just that you look at it and you go, okay, I'm ready. 1, 2, 3, count it off, and you're off. And that's a skill I'd love to, to get better at for sure. For me, anyways.
Well, I think it's a discipline
Mm.
that is actually easier to master than playing music.
Oh, interesting.
It's it has to do with counting and keeping your place and a certain kind of focus. Yeah, it's really just in a way, it's just sort of math, where
Yeah.
playing music is much more organic and emotional. This is just, can I arrive on time with the right sound? And is that a long note or a short note? And recognizing all of those kinds of things. Yeah, it's just a repetition, really.
Yeah. That you see the note and you automatically, you're not like, what is that note? You're like, okay, got it. And then you can move on, sort of situation. Yeah.
Not even, okay, got it. But you see the note and you automatically something appropriate is attached before the note so that the note arrives in the right kind of, with the right kind of spirit.
Okay.
It's not, okay, there's an accent on beat 4. That means I need to think backwards. And where am I going to start my? No, it can't be like that.
Okay.
Just
No,
has,
there was no. I see what you mean. Well, I had a book band to practice with my prof. Was one of those big band setup books. So basically, the book is all about to explain to the concept to other people who may not get it. I think I'm getting it. Is that basically, and you'll correct me, of course, being a teacher. Is that, say, like you were saying, at the end of 3 or 4 or whatever, you decide to do a fill, and you've kind of say to them, hello band, I've just made a fill, here's our figure, and then we hit it and continue on with the song, as I think is what you're saying.
exactly.
Yes.
And you used the word setup before. Yeah, we're setting up the band. And I think of it as like 1, 2, 3, de on.
Yeah, exactly.
2, 3, play it now. Here it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Show, like that kind of thing. And then if there's if it needs more energy to lead into that event, then you play something, a fill that ends with "Wake up, Joe," or "Here it is." Yeah.
Yeah, and those were fun to do. Those were fun to think of a way to announce it and to set up the band and respond. Yeah, it's kind of like to don't that feeling of like, we got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. I want to keep going because there's so much to talk about you. I have a feeling we could be doing this for 2 hours, and I don't want to take too much of your time. But thanks for sharing. Well, quickly, I tried to understand the Miles Davis. You played with Miles Davis, but it was part of a I think a 2 ensemble thing. I was trying to understand a bit. I went to the wiki and I tried to understand a bit how it worked, but maybe you could explain it better than I could explain it for that show.
It was a unique situation.
Yeah.
There's a jazz festival in Switzerland, Montreux, Switzerland, and Quincy Jones was the musical director of this event. And for, I don't know, 20 years, he'd been asking Miles Davis to do a retrospective on the music he'd recorded previously. And Miles never wanted to look backwards.
Yeah. You always want to go forward. I know. Yeah.
But for some reason, I don't know, that was at 90 or 91, Miles accepted Quincy's proposal. So we're going to play this large ensemble music with Miles that he had recorded in the late 40s and 50s and into early 60s. There was a record called Sketches of Spain and Miles Ahead and Birth of the Cool. And we basically focused on that music,
Okay.
which most of it was arranged by a man named Gil Evans.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Gil Evans had a big band in New York. But what happened was the producer of the festival in Switzerland was named Claude Knobs, and he hired a Swiss band leader named George Gruntz
Okay, now I see.
to put the band together for this recording session. And I was playing in George Gruntz's band at that time. So he called me and said, hey, we've got this amazing thing is going to happen. I want you to be part of it. So that was great. The problem was that Gil Evans' widow controlled the music that that Miles and Quincy wanted to play on the concert. And she said, if you're going to do this, you have to use the remnants of the Gil Evans band, or I won't give you the sheet music. So Quincy's sort of puzzled by this situation. He's got a band hired, and now he has to have this other band. So he thought to himself, well, maybe this is lucky. Maybe this is the only way we can make it better than the original if we have twice as many musicians and two people on each. So that's why it became such a large ensemble.
Okay.
So we got to Switzerland. Everybody's there. And I have my drums and cymbals there. And Kenwood Denard was the drummer in the Gil Evans band, and he was there. But Grady Tate was also there.
Okay.
And somehow Quincy wanted Grady Tate to play drums on this thing. So on the video and on the recording, Grady is playing my drums. And Kenwood and I are playing the percussion parts that Elvin Jones and Buster Bailey played on the original records. Buster was a fantastic classical musician, played in the New York Philharmonic for years.
Okay.
So, I mean, the funny thing was I knew Grady. I had worked with him. He was also a great singer. And I played a bunch of gigs with him as a singer. Most of them were in prisons, and that's a whole nother story.
I think that's under 20 minutes, but maybe part 2, yeah.
But Grady was really nervous. He had done 1 million records, but he said, I've never worked with Miles Davis, and now I just want to sell my drums and be a singer, but I have to deal with this guy. He said, you should play this thing.
Okay.
Said, well, Quincy wants you to play. Quincy brought you here to play. So that's kind of the way it went down. My participation was kind of insignificant.
Okay.
I was so happy to be part of it and to see the way the thing came together. And that's the story. That's the truth.
No, for sure. But still, you were still part of the. I mean, I think it's his last concert for Miles Davis, and I think he passed away shortly after. So
months later, we didn't know that was the situation. We rehearsed in Switzerland for a couple of days, and Miles didn't show up at the rehearsals. We knew he was in the hotel, but then the last night, the end of the last rehearsal before the next day when the concert was going to come, at the end of the rehearsal, Miles showed up.
Interesting.
And he had this amazing leather suit on, with all these like dangling things off of it, and looks like some kind of exotic insect.
Yeah.
And we were all happy to see him. He seemed to be in great spirits. And then the next day we had a sound check, and he attended that. And so that's that story.
Okay, interesting. Well, thanks for sharing. But yes, it was a historic concert. And yeah, but I thanks for clearing it up, because I was trying to understand what it was exactly, and yeah, you've explained it quite nicely. But yeah, to be part of that history is still kind of be interesting. That is kind of, Miles Davis's last concert, so it must be a nice feeling.
I was honored to be there.
Yeah, no, exactly. I could go on with so many artists. I will ask people to just go check out your roster and check out the recordings. I do want to talk about education, because it is a big part of what you do. Of course, first things first is that you made this drumming book, which I have a copy. This is my moment of fanboyism, if you will, which you graciously signed for me at Drummondville. And you can tell that I've already sort of noted some stuff I need to work on. being a good student. I'm like, that's a little off. I got to work on that. But I just want to ask, what was the genesis for this book back in the day? Was there a lack of sort of book that explained? If I may, for me, I think why this book is sort of still ongoing and popular is that it is concise and it is to the point. I think I don't know if that's a fair assessment, but what are your thoughts about when you started this book and how the genesis came to be?
Well, most of the drum books before this era had very little text in them. They almost could have been created by a computer.
Yeah.
The stick control book, the syncopation book, those were the books that most teachers used in the 40s, 50s, 60s. And because there was no text in them and teachers were cheap, they would look at a line of the stick control book and say, well, can we use this to solve another problem besides this?
Mm.
And so people found all kinds of treatments of different ways to use those two books in particular, syncopation and stick control.
Mm-hmm.
But if you hold that book up again.
Sure, of course, with pleasure.
You can see on the bottom, there's a name, Dan Tress.
Yep.
Yeah. So Dan was a young guy that was working at the Drummers Collective.
I see.
And he was, in a way, sort of a secretary there. This was the beginning era of DCI. Maybe that's a little before DCI, but okay. Manhattan Music created two books. The Frankie Malabé Afro-Cuban Rhythms for drum set, and De Duca de Fonseca Brazilian Rhythms for drum set. And so Dan was involved in editing those books, but he was also taking lessons from me on jazz. And at one point he said, there's nothing quite like these lessons we're doing. And I have access to Rob Wallace and Paul Siegel, who were running that company.
Okay.
And I had done some proofreading for them, correcting some stuff in those prior books. Dan said, I think if you wrote a book kind of based on what we're doing in these lessons, and include the words that you tell me,
mm-hmm.
I think that they might be interested in it. So he sort of initiated the idea of writing the book.
Okay.
So I'm grateful to Dan for that.
Thank you, Dan.
And then he helped edit it. And this was really kind of almost pre-computer days.
Yeah.
I wrote everything out in hand because I wasn't using a computer at that time. So he typed out all the text. And then I wrote the music out, and he would cut it out and tape it inside the text.
I see.
For the mock-up of the book. And actually, the first version of the book included Beyond Bop. It was a much bigger book.
Okay.
But the publisher said, if we make it 64 pages or 80 pages or 96 pages, it fits better for the printer, and maybe it's better to have less material, and it'll sell better if it's not such a massive thing.
Okay.
It was interesting dealing with the publisher because Rob Wallace said to me, I know it's going to be a good book. All I care about is what's the title and what's going to be on the cover.
Okay.
So they never proofread anything.
Really interesting.
Which was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
just out of curiosity, this is a shot that you took at a club, or was it just a?
That was a shot that was taken at a club in New York called Visiones, which closed some years ago.
Okay.
But the guy Dan Trest's girlfriend happened to be a photographer, and so that's how it happened.
Interesting. Nice.
Yeah, I'm honored and flattered and kind of amazed by the success the books have had and the longevity. And I think that book is in 5 or 6 languages now, including French.
about the English version. They had the English version, so
sure.
I went the original. I'm sure I can find it in French somewhere for sure.
Yeah, and I think those books like Syncopation and Stick Control, a lot of what's in, all of what's in there is really good, but there's no text about why you would do a certain thing.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head. And I reread this book a couple of weeks, and there were a lot of moments. Mm-hmm. Because, for instance, I never knew what to do with my kick. I was always trying to do part of comping with my bass drum. And I'm like, no, if you read the text, it talks about just feathering and keeping a straight, quarter note to help the bass player. And it's stuff like that you don't get from the book that has 100 pages of just variations. You're learning all these variations, and you're like, okay, great, I have all these variations. And then you go to a gig and, okay, variation 106 with variation 57, and that sounds great, but is it actually what's supposed to be happening on the bandstand? And I think we talked about this a bit and Drummondville, that's kind of where I'm at this point, where I'm trying to figure out that I have all these variations but don't know what to do with them. And I think your book talks more about that. There's less 100,000 variations and more of like context and how you use them and sort of thing. And I think that's why it's so popular and still being used after all these years, if I may say so.
Well, I think your assessment is correct. The way I wrote those phrases, they're basically riffs. They're riffs that I heard drummers play. And as I'm sitting down to write the book, I'm not sitting at the drums. I'm sitting with a piece of paper in front of me and just singing the phrases that I've heard a million times.
Right.
So that's the real stuff. It's not all the variations that a computer could put out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Years ago, somebody sent me a book that was titled The 264 Variations of 16th Notes.
Yeah.
And I wrote him back and I said, would you show me the 6 I need?
Yeah. Exactly.
And but so I tried to make that sort of the essence. And if you want to make some crazy variations, feel free. Mm-hmm. But this is the essence of it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's primarily how, it's become ubiquitous. Like I showed up to a prof here in Montreal, and he had it amongst his books. I showed up to another place, they had it. So it's become sort of one of those books, especially in universities, that they teach. But I like it also because it starts from really the beginning of jazz and into the bebop area. So it really takes you on a journey of the start to, getting to the bebop, and then more beyond bop drumming if you want to go even further down the road. But I think that's my assessment anyways. Yes.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you find it useful. And I'm as I said earlier, I'm flattered that so many people have found these books useful. I'm happy that they're playing better, and maybe not as mechanical, but there's some context and thought behind why you do something.
For sure, for sure. And that's the thing, I think, is you teach more concepts and ideas instead of licks, if I may say. I think that's your philosophy for teaching.
Well, it's a combination. We need vocabulary, but we also need the rudiments.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean like double paradiddle, but the rudiments are the building blocks for the vocabulary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for, if you thinking, I was watching some of the videos you were doing on YouTube, and you were talking about practicing your fundamentals, for instance, of just doing just doing those fundamentals for comping, because that's, as you just said a couple of minutes ago, which one do I really use and need all the time, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
I remember seeing a clinic by kind of an older, well, definitely an older drum teacher named Sam Ulano,
okay,
who's written 100 drum books. And he asked the question, what's a rudiment? And he wasn't talking about what's a Radamaque.
right.
What's a rudiment? A rudiment is the building block of a language. And then he said, the original 13 rudiments, why were there 13 rudiments? He said, because there were 13 colonies in America originally. Then they went, why were there 26 rudiments, not 25 or 27? He said, because there were 26 letters in the alphabet. And because they associate, and these are the letters that build words for drumming. And now there's 700 rudiments with all the hybrid stuff.
Yeah, I'm up to about 30. I think I'm good with
Yeah.
at this point.
I use about 4. I don't all, but I use about 4.
Yeah. I've been doing this rudimental thing. Anyways, there's a rudimental thing from Tommy Igoe that I do through, and it's amazing. It gets my hands going and everything. But like you say, I rarely use that triple Radamaque thing or into a context.
Yeah, but it's just like the basketball players who do push-ups.
Yeah.
Well, they're not doing push-ups because that's what they need on the court.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Interesting. A few more concepts. There was one thing you said at the clinic, and I was interested to know, and I hope I paraphrase this, and I hope I say this correctly, but you were talking about molar. And you were talking about molar and the fact that molar is one way to get a sound, not the ubiquitous way, or not the only way to get a sound. And I have to admit, we're so inundated with molar. We hear it so much that we almost think it's the only method. And you were talking about that at the clinic, and I was wondering if you could have your thoughts about that.
Well, molar is kind of a whipping motion.
Mm-hmm.
Like when Morello taught me molar, he made me stand behind him and put my hand here. And then he went like this. And I heard this. And then he said, tell me what you observed. And I said, I felt your arm I felt my arm hitting your side. And immediately after that, I heard the accented note in the molar.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, well, what is that telling you? And what it was telling me was that when this occurred, it made the wrist jump like that.
Mm.
And molar is really about the suppleness of the wrist and how quickly it changes direction. And the result of that kind of faster note and then lower bounces like a basketball is that there's always going to be an accented note. There's going to be some contour to the phrase.
Right.
Now, if you want to play something like that's an even sound, you can't use molar.
Mm-hmm.
Your grip can be loose, you can be letting the stick bounce off the head, but it doesn't have this powered stroke that yields some free notes. So most of the time I'm not using molar.
Okay, interesting.
I'm always trying to get that legato sound. Let me grab a
Yeah, go ahead, for sure.
So I can play like this. And basically I'm playing one note and getting some
Lower notes, yes.
bounces because of the power of the first note.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people teach molar that it's an arm stroke, a wrist stroke, and a finger stroke. And it's that combination that you cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm doing this, my fingers are not involved at all. And I'll show you. I can hold the stick like this. And
Okay.
I can hold the stick like this. And it still works. I can hold the stick like this. And maybe it works. But the point is the fingers aren't moving. It's the... And you can see it there, I think.
Yeah, no, we saw it. Yes.
And with the left hand, it's kind of the power feels like it's down and out. Not this way, but this way.
Yeah. I see.
Yeah. So you like the sound of my desk?
It sounds amazing. I always say the world is a percussive instrument for me. Anything is percussive.
But just to continue a little bit, if I want this sound, I can't use molar.
Exactly.
Because it's always going to have a little wave in it.
And to have that consistency is that fingers now. You're just doing fingers to have that consistency and no accent.
Well, I was using my wrist.
Okay. Oh, I see. Not the whipping motion. I understand. Okay.
No whip. No whip.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, you want... Which is different than... I see my shorts. Oh, okay.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. I was concentrating on the sticks. Don't worry about it. Okay. But well, and yes, and I found that interesting because because molar is so, you need to learn molar. You need to molar's the way, and there's nothing wrong with molar, but that did kind of strike me when you talk about getting different grips to get different sounds is basically what I was trying to get at. Yeah. Very nice. Thank you for the demonstration. I've been expecting a demonstration. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, two more concepts, and then I'll ask you a few last questions, is flow. You were talking about flow on the drum set, to not think and just be just let yourself flow, let yourself be as you're playing music or trying to do an idea. I don't know if you want to talk about a bit of that, or.
Well, now that I'm thinking.
Sorry.
Well, I don't want to sound like I'm thinking when I'm playing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I practice so that, well, I think there's two ways that people practice. People practice the things they hope to play, the things they want to play. That's one sort of strategy. And the other strategy is that people practice skills so that they can play what they hear.
Okay.
And most people are a combination of sort of known material and then connective material that's arriving in the moment.
Okay.
And it's the integration of those things that has to happen without any kind of hiccups, without any kind of glitches. Then you have some flow.
So, and an idea where basically you're taking 4 bars, 8 bars, 16 bars of solo, for instance, and you have an idea that you're trying to do, and eventually you get to the idea? You practice that idea to the point we're not thinking about it, if I understood correctly?
Well, yes, I practice an idea until it can be triggered, not by my brain, but by the stimulation I'm getting from the other musicians.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's like we're having a conversation and we're reacting to each other in the conversation. I don't know what I'm going to say, but I know there's a million words I will never use. I'm going to use the words that I know to try and communicate something. So the better you can move paradiddles around the drums, the more options you have with that, the less you have to think about, oh, this is a paradiddle. It's just a sound that you know, that you like, that your hands make, without thinking about right, left, right, right. What's next?
Right. and to that basically is, which blends into the last question in terms of like practice and teaching and all that stuff, is that what you're saying, is that basically you when you get to a practice session, you're trying to do things that you're not comfortable with or that make you lose concentration to the point where it becomes flow, is what you were trying to explain at the clinic.
Yeah, I think so. But then there's the issue of being able to play things in the practice room that you can't play, that never occur to you when you play with people.
Okay, that's true.
And I kind of have this analogy that there's a gap between the practice room and the stage.
Okay.
And we need to create a halfway house in between that helps us get this material over here.
Okay.
And the halfway, well, let's say you've got a new lick that you're working on and it's starting to feel pretty comfortable. Now, can you play that lick when you have the stimulation of a recording going in your mind? Or is it only something you can play when you're focused 100% on it? So once you can get some flow with the thing, then put on a recording and play that lick as many times as you can with the recording. Make sure you're with the time and you know where you are within the phrases of the music, but you're not necessarily applying it in a musical way. You're just injecting it as many times as you can without losing the groove.
I see.
So that's step one in the halfway house. And then step two in the halfway house, once step one is kind of happening okay, step two is, can you put on a different recording and see if something in that recording triggers you to play this new thing?
That's true.
And then it's more fully baked and more likely to be available to you in a mature way when you're playing with people.
Interesting. That is true. For a different tempo, different feel. No, that is true. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't want to have to think about what I'm going to play. I want to have comfort doing a variety of different things that hopefully will be triggered by the stimulation I'm getting from the other musicians rather than coming from me first.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to do this lick, this 7 lick here.
Yeah. I'm gonna stick it here because I think it's great to hear, and it isn't.
Well, usually it's either the wrong spot or you mess it up because you're thinking about it. And midway you realize, oh, I shouldn't have done this here.
The guys are starting to turn around. Exactly.
Yeah. So get as much different kinds of vocabulary comfortable in the practice room, and then trust your ears,
right?
Not your brain,
right?
Yeah. What if Vinnie Colaiuta had a great saying, which is, "Thought is the enemy of flow."
Yeah, with Rick Beato. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I'm thinking about. Do all your thinking in the practice room, and increase your vocabulary and increase your access, and then trust that you're going to make a mature judgment about. The music is going to tell you when it's a mature option to use these things.
Exactly. Interesting. Very nice. I'll stop there for the concepts because, again, we could go on, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but thank you so much for explaining those things. I'm going to play a little questionnaire for you, and I don't know if you could do this just out of curiosity, but if I ask you to describe these drummers in one word, so for instance, if I say Elvin, what would be the first word to pop in your mind, for instance?
Roundness.
Constant trump.
The sound of his flow is incredible.
He does just never stops, but yet it's still just ongoing. That is true. Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Tony.
The master.
Jack DeJohnette.
Flow. Definitely flow with Jack. And musicianship.
I think of freedom. I heard him on the record with Pat Metheny, and it just sounds like the band is keeping time and Jack is just going off.
I think in the Beyond Bob drumming, I talked about a concept that he told me, which was, you've been playing a song for 5 minutes or whatever, and then there's a point where you're going to trade fours or trade eights. He said that sometimes he's not thinking about the beats in that 4-bar or 8-bar phrase, but because he's been playing the song so long, he can feel 4 measures in terms of the number of seconds it takes.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, he used this analogy he called a washing machine time.
Okay.
And imagine you're in a laundromat and you've got your clothes in the dryer, and it's one of those dryers with a window.
Yeah,
and
that
you can
turns.
see what's happening. And the machine is rotating at a fixed pace. And we can consider that 1 measure or 4 measures. But he said, but the laundry never drops to the bottom at the same time. Sometimes it gets carried over here. Sometimes it comes over here. Sometimes it drops right here. Sometimes it sticks all the way. But the rate is still the same. So he's thinking about soloing kind of in that, at times in that kind of fashion.
I've never thought of a washer and dryer as an influence for drummer, but that's interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Roy Haynes.
Snap.
He does have that when he does hit that. Yeah. The snare or the drum. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's a transparency. He plays kind of busy, but there's still a transparency there, a lightness that's different from Elvin.
Yeah. Elvin could be sort of very almost this height sometimes.
Well, there's a density to it also.
Yeah, too. Yeah. Mel Lewis.
Well, his nickname was the Tailor because he made everything fit together so well.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, he's so musical and musically mature with what these days we would say minimum technique. But he maximized his technique with the maturity and the placement and the choices he made.
I see. So not the most technical drummer, but the most musical, if you will.
Incredibly musical and an amazingly swinging, open, relaxed groove.
Interesting. Cool. Joe Morello, since you talked about him.
Well, he was
Oh, so
no, I have to think about it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut your flow.
Well, I could talk about the technical side of the thing, I would say he was incredibly generous.
Mm,
My relation was with him as a student.
I see.
But if you want to hear some stuff that will blow your mind, there's a song on a Dave Brubeck record called Jazz Impressions of the USA.
Okay.
And the song is called Sounds of the Loop. And there's the most virtuosic, amazing drum solo on that song, where he's basically playing time. Most of it, he's playing time with his right hand, and this wicked fast stuff with his left hand and different melodies.
Really
And
good.
it's kind of a crazy solo because Downbeat magazine used to have these blindfold tests where they would play songs for
Mm.
that played the same instrument and asked them what their impression was. And they played this Sounds of the Loop song for Shelly Manne. And Shelly Manne said, "That's the best coordination between two drummers I've ever heard." So see if you can find that track.
I'm curious. I'm definitely going to go check that out today. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
I
I thought I knew a lot about Morello, but I've never heard about that one.
Oh, it's you can hear some Moeller stuff in there, but also some finger stuff.
Okay.
And then towards the end of the solo, it kind of goes into Buddy singles on the snare drum realm.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's from 1957.
Okay. See, yeah, because the
And
jazz. Sorry.
sorry, you can tell that it's edited.
Oh, okay.
I mean, not that the solo itself is intact, but it was edited to the track. You can kind of hear that.
Okay.
And Joe, I asked Joe about that, and he said, "Yeah, we were in California. We made the record, and then the next day, Dave asked me to take a longer drum solo." So he said, we were out on the beach, and Dave said, "Come on, man, let's make the drum solo longer." And so he said he went from the beach to the studio, and then they edited it into the original track.
Original track. I see. Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Huh. Well, talking about Buddy, what is your thoughts? Quickly, one word about Buddy.
Demon.
he's just fast. It's just incredible sometimes. Even to this day, I watch a couple of videos lately, and I was just like, yeah, it's just, and he doesn't seem to be trying. He's just playing.
Well, the thing about Buddy is, he started so young.
Mm.
His parents were in show business, and as a 3 or 4-year-old, he was, drums the boy wonder going out on the vaudeville stage. And what did he experience? Well, he found out immediately what got an audience reaction and what didn't. And I think that conditioning kind of propelled him towards a certain kind of execution.
Right.
But I met him a few times. He was a very generous man.
Okay. Yeah.
There was a music store in New York called Manny's, and one of Buddy's daughter's boyfriend ran the drum department of this store. And I walked into the shop once, and it was a very big store where downstairs were all saxophones and horns and sheet music, and upstairs was the drum department. I walked in, and I'm working my way to going upstairs, and I hear this voice, and it's Riley. And I look, and it's Buddy.
This is what time? Around what time? What year?
In early 80s.
Okay.
I said, "Oh, hi, Buddy. How are you?" He said, "I'm good." He said, "Are you still with Woody Herman's band?" I said, "No, I left Woody Herman's band." And he said, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm playing some weddings and playing with some singers and trying to get established here in New York." And he said, "Well, that was a big mistake because Woody Herman was the best teacher you could ever have."
Okay.
And so I thought, oh, this old guy, what does he know?
Okay.
Realized, in the years after that, that I should have stayed with Woody Herman longer.
Okay.
Benefited by staying with him longer.
Hmm.
So I
But you
wish
were.
I wish Buddy had told me that sooner.
Well, you turned out fine, anyways. You turned out great, John.
I'm working on it.
Last two, Max Roach. Thoughts on Max?
Oh, Mr. Melody.
Hmm.
His soloing is so melodic and so organized.
Yeah.
He's if you had the opportunity to meet Max Roach, it was like meeting the president. He had
Okay.
this regal aura about him, and his playing kind of conveyed that also.
Interesting. And a lot of people don't know, but I believe that's where more modern drummers like Bruford or Peart were influenced to do that to pap because I think Max was doing that back in the day, and I think that concept transferred to later drummers who were retaking that concept for a solo.
Yeah, playing over ostinatos.
Yeah,
and using the ostinato as kind of a unifying device.
yeah, as a foundation to do something on top. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And lastly, John Riley. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, he's got a long way to go.
I think you're doing fine.
Oh, I'm just excited about music and about hearing new stuff. I'm stimulated.
Is there new stuff that you're excited about? Actually, if I could ask it quickly.
Well, my students are always bringing me things I haven't heard before.
Okay.
And trying to understand those things and maybe embrace parts of it. You can kind of develop what you do and sort of freeze dry it and do that thing for the rest of your life. I'm trying to just keep growing as if I'm discovering it all for the first time. And so I'm a student. That's what I would say. I'm a student of the music.
Interesting. Very nice. I think we'll end there. I mean, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. You've been so gracious, and it was an awesome talk, John. Thank you so much. Before I leave you, of course, you're still playing with the Vanguard Orchestra. When can people go see you? Where is it? And what are your upcoming plans?
Well, we've been playing 59 years every Monday at the Village Vanguard in New York. And of course, Mel Lewis was the original drummer in the band.
Yes, you didn't start at 3. You didn't start. No. You weren't the drummer back.
But I've been so happy for the opportunity to be doing it all these years, and it turns out I'm actually been there longer than he has.
Oh, right.
And we play every Monday night, and it's a fantastic band we have about 300 different songs in our library, and so you never hear the same thing twice.
Interesting.
And it's been a challenge for me to kind of try and fill Mel's shoes without feeling handcuffed by that.
Okay.
And then at the same time to be able to find just the right texture to support all the different soloists in a band.
Right.
So I'm still having fun there after over 30 years of doing it.
Very nice. If you guys are interested, if you're interested, there is a video on the 50 years of Mondays that's available on YouTube, which you are playing, and we get to see, I think, 4 or 5 songs. And yeah, it is a very cool place. I've never been. I would love to go at some point, but it's just this little tiny basement club, but it has so much history to it, and the band is all tightly knit together physically and, of course, musically on the bandstand.
Yeah, my elbow and the trumpet player, Terrell Stafford, next to me, we're always rubbing elbows, and there's no room for a music stand there, so I have to know the music.
Okay, okay. So you're all doing it by memory.
I am, yeah.
Okay, interesting. It's impressive. So you're doing that, and besides the Vanguard Orchestra, anything else coming up for the rest of the year?
Well, I did a concert last week that was kind of a tribute to a man named Jim McNeely, who was a major composer to major composition contributor to the Vanguard Jazz Orchestra. Yeah, that was really an amazing concert. I have some things in Europe coming up. And still teaching at the Manhattan School of Music.
Okay.
So things are rolling along.
Very cool. And if people want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Through my website or emailing me directly, John. The best way is johnrileymusic@gmail.com.
Excellent.
Thank you
so much. Thank you so much, John. That was an amazing ride and so much tidbits that are just fascinating. So thank you so much. Very gracious of you to taking the time to talk to us.
Happy to share and to maybe stimulate some of your fans who will then stimulate me.
That's how it goes. Let's do the dryer thing that Jack is talking about and just stimulate each other.
Exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome, John. Thank you so much, and all the best for the rest of the year, and stay in touch.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for being with us with the episode. Thank you so much, John, for all the time. Gracious of you to spend with us. Stick around next week for more Drumfillskafe. Until then, all the best to you. Ciao, ciao.